Hi, Eric. You're ready to begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Lewis. Welcome to our presentation, our workshop on coding across the curriculum. And so today we'll spend some time kind of talking through how Scratch can be used in non-traditional class settings, such as ELA classes and social studies classes, to allow uh, our children to demonstrate their learning prior units. And so if we could go ahead and bring up the slides now. Um, all right. And so again, our topic for today is coding across the curriculum of Scratch. We'll specifically focus towards, in the latter part of the presentation, um, on a fifth grade lesson or fifth grade standard or expectation in social studies from the state of Louisiana, to give an example of how this can work. So I want to kind of just go through brief introductions. We'll talk about, give a little background on BR STEM, and then we'll dive into the actual program that we've worked on in partnership with the Scratch Foundation. So again, my name is Eric Lewis. I'm the founder and executive director of Baton Rouge STEM. I have a fairly diverse background. Have 25 plus years of industry experience. I've worked as an engineer in both the defense sector and pharmacy automation. I previously run, kind of changed careers about 15 years ago, and kind of got more focused into education advocacy. I ran a STEM focused charter school here in Baton Rouge for a few years, and then I've been an entrepreneur for a number of years as well. And so again, I reference Baton Rouge. I'm originally from Baton Rouge, and so I spent a lot of time here in our community. And then by way of education, I have an electrical engineering degree from Southern University in Baton Rouge, and master's in business administration from LSU. And then one bit of information that I wanted to share: people often think that because folks are from South Louisiana, they love spicy foods, and so I'm one of the rare individuals that does not care much for spicy foods. Um, so if we could, in the comment section, if everybody could kind of share your name, organization that you represent, and then maybe some unsuspected phenomenon about yourself that people would not expect. So I'll give us about 60 seconds to do that. So again, if you could just share your name, maybe organization and or um, region or city that you're from, along with some phenomenon about yourself that people might not expect. All right, we'll give about 15 more seconds for that. All right. So just a little bit more about BR STEM. It stands for Baton Rouge STEM, but we work primarily with policymakers, educators, and the community at large to integrate STEM into classroom learning in alignment with college and career readiness standards. And so, for those in the United States, there have been a number of years where we've talked about things like Common Core and developing college and career readiness standards. And in some cases, different states or different locales have different set of rules or different set of expectations. But in alignment with Louisiana, across, excuse me, across each of the core subjects and in computer science now as well, there is a push to ensure that what kids are learning in school is aligned with preparing them to either follow the path to college or, upon completing high school, follow the path into a career. And so a lot of our work, whether it's in a school setting or outside of a school setting, is focused on ensuring that the kids are being able to bring to life the things that they're expected to learn in their classroom settings. And so I mentioned earlier, we partnered with the Scratch Foundation, I think last year or year before last, um, and along with one of the schools that we serve here in our community to develop a pilot curriculum for K through eighth grade students where they were able to use Scratch in each of the four core subjects. And so the way that it was structured, it's kind of more of a capstone. I know with the schools here in our community, they do units. So there are things that they're learning and they're broken out into to units. And so depending on the subject or the grade level, the kids may have anywhere from four to eight units of content that they're learning over the course of the school year. And so the idea being that if they once they complete a unit, they can do sort of like a capstone project or a summary project where traditionally they may do a presentation on the things that they learn, so they can actually use Scratch in that place as a way to bring Scratch into the classroom, and particularly classrooms that normally would not be using Scratch. And so there's two components to it. We have a set of lessons for K through eighth grade, again, based on Louisiana standards. And then we also have a professional development component for teachers to help them to integrate Scratch into their learning, again, across all four primary subjects. And so the idea is that it reinforces the core subject learning. And so even embedding in ELA and social studies, we're not trying to turn ELA into a tech class. It really just reinforces the things that the teachers are teaching and the students are expecting to learn in a way that's more immersive and hands-on when it comes to Scratch. We also focus on an opportunity, or this is another tool to help enhance student engagement in the learning process, as well as enhancing equity in computer science. And so, again, we have some schools where students are offered computer science courses, but by doing this across the board, we get more kids engaged and immersed in the idea of computer science, both as a learning opportunity and as a career path. All right, and so we're going with the basic assumption that, or we're trying to open this presentation up to folks that may be new to Scratch, and so there'll be some basic foundational things that we'll cover in the next few slides before we actually get into the activity itself. Um, and so I also want to position it from a standpoint of ensuring that people understand that these are functions, basic Scratch functions that are being used in the sample project that I'll present to you or share with you. All right, and so when I teach Scratch or introduce teachers and students to Scratch, um, this is kind of modeled after the way that we typically do it. And so there's 4 to 5 basic elements or areas within Scratch that we want to make sure everyone's aware of. And so we talk about how Scratch integrates art. And so the question is, what is the tool that painters or artists use to paint on? And so that's why we tend to call this middle section the canvas. And then kind of sticking with the art theme, um, this section over to my left, um, we'll refer to as palette. And so within that section, there's two things. And so there's a color palette where you see all the functions. And so, as another example of a way that we infuse literacy into this, because oftentimes we are working with students that are challenged with reading or literacy. And so, to help in that process, we will call out the color of a functional button as well as the name. And so we'll say, as an example, the blue move circle. And then obviously, when the students click on it, then the blocks within inside will turn blue for the move function. So we have that section. We talk about the sprite of the cat, which is a sprite. And then we also talk about the stage. All right. So those are the 4 primary sections that we'll focus on. in today's presentation. And so this next slide just basically explains um, those sections in a little bit more detail. All right, and so this next series of slides, as I mentioned, we're going to kind of talk through some of the different blocks that we'll actually use in the sample project. Um, and so we use events, and again, we'll typically say yellow events. And then we also explain to our students how this is similar to when you're developing an app. Um, and it's going to help them on that path, again, if they continue to pursue coding when they get into more text-based languages like C++, of what an event is. And so if you are, pull up your favorite app on your phone or your tablet, there's an action or an event that has to take place in order for you to open it. And so that is similar to the when green flag press button, or when spacebar, or when a key is pressed. And so we'll explain that to our students. And it's also an opportunity to kind of explain kind of the history of programming or coding before we had smartphones and before video games were on consoles, and how originally video games were on computers. And this when spacebar press function is literally how video games were played in the earlier years. So we'll kind of talk through that as well, and kids find a lot of interest in that. Um, and so this slide, yeah, so this actually kind of walks you through the initial process of beginning the coding, I'm sorry, and dragging your event button onto the canvas. Um, and so if we were in a setting and you had your computers out, like this is how we would actually walk teachers through this process so they can actually begin the process of coding. All right, and so we introduce the next section, which is motion. And in a lot of our introductory workshops, we kind of start off by getting both teachers and students to understand just how to get characters or sprites to move around on the screen. And so again, we would go to the blue motion tab, and there's a few primary ones. And again, these three we'll be using in our sample project. So the basic one to get your character move, um, the go to X, Y, which gets them to a certain spot on the screen, and then the glide function. And so in this, we also talk through the coordinate plane, so the X and Y axis for middle school students, and understanding, helping them to understand the connection between what they're learning in math and how it applies to coding. And so even outside of Scratch, like this is still applicable for a lot of the activities that kids are interested in when it comes to technology. And so this is a great way, or we found this is a great way to actually integrate what students are learning in math to their actual experience in Scratch. All right. Um, and so then the next section is on the purple looks button. Um, there are a few of these that we'll actually use. So we'll use the hide and the show button, which is kind of down towards the bottom. We'll use the hide and the show buttons in this project. And then the thought bubbles and the speak bubbles, we'll use those as well for your sample project. All right, sound. So obviously, or I guess at least my experience, when you start off with the cat, the kids get really excited when they hear the cat meow. Um, and so sometimes just to kind of minimize the distractions in the classroom, we have to silence it. But we'll actually use it a small piece for the sample project, but there won't be a whole lot of sound. Now, but I will say that oftentimes, and again, in this example of using it as a tool for an ELA or a social studies class, the way that we do actually integrate it is if, so sometimes we may start off with the students using the thought bubbles or the speak bubbles to have in conversations between characters in a story that they've learned about. Um, just to kind of set their project up. And then it's also a way for the teacher to allow the kids to again practice their grammar skills by using the speaker to thought buttons. And then they can then go back and change out the speaker thought bubbles for actual verbal conversations. And so the students will get a joy out of that by being able to hear their voices on the screen, or they can work in pairs um, to demonstrate a conversation that may have taken place in a literacy text or in a history story that they're learning about. All right. And then what this will be the last piece, choosing a new sprite. And so in the example that we're going to share, the students are actually embedding themselves in the story, um, but then also showing teachers how to add sprites or to get to the library. And so sometimes they may want kids to just pick something from the library to demonstrate something that they learned, again, in a novel or a story that they've read and they need to summarize. So we'll go through that. And then I think this, from a literary standpoint, this is probably one of the coolest aspects of being able to add the background so the story comes to life. And so whether they pick a embedded background or stage from the library, or they search the internet, and this is for characters as well, or they search the internet to add a character, which we've actually done, we will be doing in the sample project. And so these are the main functions within Scratch um, that at a basic level, we try to ensure that the teachers and the students are familiar with in order to be successful in utilizing Scratch in an ELA or a social studies setting. And so I keep referencing ELA and social studies, but again, the same thing would apply if um, teachers in math or in science or PE or any other class for that matter um, would want to utilize Scratch as a way for their students to be able to present their learning over the course of the school year or the course of a lesson. All right, and so there's some additional resources as well that can kind of help to make this process much more engaging. And so, and I'll call those out once we get to the project. But we also utilize Canva to help with creating artwork. Obviously, you can do some artwork in Scratch as well. Um, and then the website Remove BG, and that's specifically to help embed students as characters in their stories, and then your smartphone. Okay, so those are some three additional outside resources that we utilize in this process. All right, and so as I said, in the project with the Scratch Foundation, our goal was to help create a series of lessons that would align with Louisiana standards for our our youngest learners, which will be kindergartners, up through eighth grade. So students that are approximately anywhere from 13 to 15 years old. Um, and so we have this standard from our social studies curriculum where students are expected to, I apologize, I can't see. Students are expected to demonstrate their understanding of geographical features of West Africa, such as the Atlantic Ocean, the Niger River, um, the Sahara, the Gulf of Guinea, and Timbuktu. Um, and so what we have is we've kind of taken a lesson and helping kids to understand that Timbuktu is present day Mali and West Africa. And so the students will have done a little research on the area, um, like on Timbuktu, on Mali, and the entire Sahara region, and then create a Scratch project that they would then present to their class of their findings from their research. So if we could pull up the Scratch project at this time. Okay, so I'm going to actually play it first. Um, and then before we get into questions, I'll play it first. Before we get into questions, I'll go ahead and actually step through it so everybody can see the code from the inside. And then we'll come back, we'll play it again, and then we'll kind of open it up for questions that you can leave in the comment section, and then we'll respond to your questions. Okay, so there's still another piece to that, but I wanted to kind of step through it, and then we'll go back and play it again. Uh, so there's two characters. There's the dog Dot, and then Harry, who's a student. And so again, Harry's done his research, or his research in addition to what he's learned in class around the West African region, and particularly Mali, along with the Sahara Desert. And so he's traveling from his hometown of Baton Rouge, and specifically from his neighborhood, um, by airplane, uh, to the West African region. And so we bring in geography as well as math. So he communicates how far it is from Baton Rouge to Mali, and then his dog realizes that that's a very, very far way to travel, and tells him that he can go by himself, and then he runs off, or she runs off. But then surprisingly, the dog appears in Mali, um, explaining the map as well as in one of the communities. Um, Notices that the housing is different from where she and Harry lives, and finds it interesting. But also on the map, she had to run off again because she told Harry he could go by himself, and she didn't want him to see her. So Harry's project ensures that Dot and him are not in the same scenes. Um, and so we're changing scenes, and those are backgrounds that again were downloaded, both the maps and the pictures that make up the background were pictures that were researched online and then loaded into Scratch as part of the stage. Harry also, we took pictures of him sitting in a chair, and then that's where we use remove.bg to remove the background from. We took the picture of him, and then we used Canva to place him inside of an airplane. And then we had to go back, and from that graphic that was created, remove BG to embed Harry in the airplane as a sprite in Scratch. And this actually overlaps with some other activities that, um, as BR STEM, we've done with kids, where we're teaching them about aeronautical engineering, um, and the opportunity to, again, travel the world. So, like, this actual lesson literally has two applications. um, and it can be reused to teach the kids other things aside from what they have to learn in this social studies lesson. Um, and so we're looking at the script or the code for Harry's component of the activity. And so, as I mentioned, like we're using, so this part of here is what we did not address just yet, but we use it when green flag click, and then these all the different components that we had talked through. In the presentation, which you guys should have access to, there's a link to this project, which obviously you guys can open up and share and replicate and use for your own purposes. But this is all the code of the script for Harry's activities. And so we switch back and forth. So sometimes the background changed under him. You can actually obviously do it separately and apart on scripts for the backgrounds, but we've embedded the background changes in the characters. So some of them are changed in Harry's code, some is changed in Dot's code. Um, and so, again, while this was a social studies lesson, I think it also brought in the opportunity for math with the kids. So they're trying to figure out coordinates of where to place Harry and place his puppy, as well as some of the delays when the screens are changing or when Harry is not on the screen or Dot's not on the screen, being able to calculate and count up to figure out the wait times so that they sync together. And so I've always felt like it's important. So even in the social studies, if we remove scratch from the picture, even in a social studies class, like it's a great opportunity for a non-math teacher to reinforce math when there's opportunities to, and then vice versa for a math teacher to reinforce literacy when they have opportunities to in their classes. And so this kind of plays right into that. All right, so let me go back real quick. Um, and then we'll play this one more time, and then we'll open the floor up for any questions that you guys may have. All right, and so with that, any questions that you guys have, you can place in the comments section, and we will go through and respond to your questions. And then while we're waiting, just a few, I guess, credits or things would. So again, the school, Sharon Hills Elementary School here in Baton Rouge, and so I think it was pretty cool for Harry to be able to figure out how far it is from his school to Mali and include that in his presentation. All right, so I see a question. I just need a little bit more clarity. So there's a question that asks how to get the certificate. Um, so I'm wondering if you mean how do you get access to the project? Okay. Yeah. So give me 1 second and I can actually paste the link to the project in the chat for everyone. All right. And so if you should be able to open it up and kind of comb through it, but definitely please reuse it for your own benefit. And then obviously, so I think one thing I'll share again. So part of this was something that we had created in our STEM camps, our STEM activities that we do with the kids, where we were focused on aeronautical engineering. So that's where the flight piece originated, um, and wanting kids to understand, students who may have never actually been on an airplane and not have gone out the country. And so we had a separate scratch project where the students were able to pick like 3 cities that they would like to visit, as long as those cities were outside of the United States. And so the core to the actual project itself was really about them being able to fly and see different cities and their backgrounds. And so that's when I say that there's like multiple applications to this. I think that's a great opportunity for kids to kind of discover the world as well. Um, and so that's a core kind of component of the project. But then to the point of what Harry in this instance was charged with learning in school, he specifically traveled to a country that he had to learn about or is expected to learn about in his school learning. Um, okay, so yeah, so everyone should have access uh, to the project at this point. So just let us know if there are other questions or inquiries that you may have. I will share while we're waiting on additional questions. I think another key component of this for me that was important. Um, I participated in some scratch sessions previously where we talked about equity and inclusion. Um, and so the idea of being able to use remove BG or smartphone so kids can take pictures of themselves and embed themselves um, into the projects, I think it really goes a long way with helping kids to see themselves in technology. Um, and while Scratch does an excellent job of it, I mean, we just have all sorts of kids of all shades and variations from around the world. And so being able to give them the power to embed themselves in their stories, I think is a very powerful thing. Um, I think it's a very powerful thing that I would encourage you um, to help your kids or allow your students to do when at all possible. All right. And so, with that, thank everyone for your attendance and participation and engagement. I hope that you found it useful and that you can use the project for your own uses with the kids and families that you work with. But again, my name is Eric Lewis with Baton Rouge STEM, and if we can be of any help or assistance to you, please feel free to reach out at any point in time. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the remainder of the conference.